Chapter 1 Among the Ruins 13 years after the mysterious woman and baby appeared in the overlooked temple, Trig Shepminter still lived in her family's small holding outside of Edelton City. The countryside looked almost identical to the way it had been on the night of Pentwa's encounter, but a glance at the city betrayed just how much time had passed. Edelton grew so large that urban space encroached on the surrounding hills. The twin rivers entered the city as wide and mighty waterways, but the city consumed so much water that both rivers simply ended here. A canal carried wastewater to a treatment facility where no liquid went to waste. The spaceport was expanded and could now accommodate 2 starships instead of 1. It was a point of pride. Outside of Edelton, the Shepminter small holding seemed to bask in the glory of the sunrise. Delicious fruit and vegetable plants turned their flowers to face the coming dawn. Pentwa herself stepped outside to water her crops, using her husband's old cane to swat at a group of birds. An upstairs window rattled as someone opened it from the inside. A teenage boy peered out, watching the flock as they dispersed. Then he went back to what he was doing. This person was not Pentwa's husband. Ellie died years ago. Instead, the boy living with Pentwa was Trig Shepminter. Trig was a well-built 13-year-old. Having spent his life on the farm, Trig had grown bigger and stronger than most boys his age. He had a physical feature that was extremely rare among Sutharians: indigo-colored eyes. One other detail that set Trig apart from children his age was that he was an early riser, a side effect of living on a subsistence farm. Trig was awake and ready for the day more than 3 hours before school was supposed to start. Before leaving his room, Trig opened the closet door and used a cloth to wipe the dust away from a small shrine on the middle shelf. The shrine itself consisted of 2 seashells and a miniature statue of a woman. Trig left an offering, a handful of flower petals, at the statue's feet. Trig ran downstairs to get breakfast from the kitchen, and Pentwa joined him. She paused in the living room to examine a larger shrine beneath the front window. Here, several miniature statues depicted the many gods and goddesses of the Sutharian pantheon. Pentwa raised an eyebrow when she noticed the statue of Ray, implement of ecstasy, was missing once again. She quietly chuckled to herself and stepped away to eat breakfast with her adopted son. Trig and Pentwa treated each other like a mother and son, yet there were a great many differences between the two. Pentwa and Trig were both Sutharians, but they belonged to different ethno-linguistic groups. Pentwa was a Valdemar, Trig was a Birkin. Valdemar are the largest Sutharian ethnic group. For the most part, they have pale skin and speak an archaic language called Valdem. They dominate Sutharian culture and make up the ruling class, and have many traditions that Trig found very strange, such as the concepts of Athira and Termin. The Birkin are former nomads with light brown skin and curly hair. Despite being numerous, the Birkin are looked down upon by most Sutharians. People expect the Birkin to be troublemakers or rabble-rousers, and the arrival of a Birkin family in the neighborhood was often enough to make other people move away. After breakfast, Trig gave Pentwa a goodbye hug, and then left his house in the outskirts of Edelton and walked into the colony, book bag over his arm and a scarf over his mouth. There are no paved roads in Edelton. The colony could not afford such a luxury. During the warm summer months, even the lightest footstep kicked up clouds of dust. A small crowd of people could generate sandstorms, and the dusty haze over the city proper was a permanent feature. Trig did not look where he was going. He walked this route to school every day for the past year and knew it very well. Classes would start 2 hours after sunrise, and it only took him about 10 minutes to reach the school on foot. With more than an hour and a half of free time, Trig decided to climb one of the large hills outside of town and visit an old, familiar landmark. At the top of a sloping hill on the outskirts of Edelton City, there was a crumbling ruin. Decades ago, it had been a religious structure of some kind. Pentua called it the Overlooked Temple. In her younger days, Pentua and her husband would visit the temple to stargaze. Looking around, Trig could understand why. The hilltop ruin was slightly taller than the largest building in Eddleton City. Clear skies abounded without obstruction, and a gentle, refreshing breeze swept over the site. Trig usually came here to hang out with other teenagers, climbing the rubble for fun. He was hoping to find, and maybe spend time with, a pretty girl, but Trig would have no such luck today. The ruins were empty this morning. Trig sat down in front of what used to be the shrine. A hole in the ceiling allowed daylight to slip through, warming the otherwise dark space. Trig passed the time by throwing bits of rubble off the hillside. Eddleton was a low-gravity world, so Trig could send rocks flying hundreds of meters, all the way to the roadside at the bottom of the hill. He enjoyed the clouds of dust kicked up when the rocks landed. Of course, Trig was too far away to hear any noise when the rocks hit the ground. He tried to imagine what it sounded like, and was caught off guard when he heard a dull, thudding noise coming from just below his feet. "The place falling apart?" he said to himself. More noises came from below. Trig realized there must be a room underneath the shrine. He stood up, straining his ears to listen closely. He could hear the faint scraping of boots on gravel, along with the sound of a person panting loudly. There was somebody in the basement below. Trig looked around for a door or a stairway. At the same time, he called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" Trig heard a gasp from somewhere underneath him. There was definitely a person in the basement. A moment later, Trig found a stone staircase that led to the lower level. He briefly considered being stealthy, to take the other person by surprise, but he was stopped by a new sound. A voice drifted up the dark stairs. A girl's voice. "No, oh no, 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 no." She sounded terrified. Trig's heart started to race. He clattered down the stairs as fast as he could, making far more noise than necessary to announce his presence. Trig ran down the stairs and rounded the corner, expecting to find someone. But then, "Take that!" the girl's voice shouted, and then something struck him across the face. Trig was so taken aback that he fell over backwards, hit the stone wall, and slid to the floor. Blinking, Trig quickly realized that someone had thrown a jacket at him. It was crumpled in his lap now. Standing over him, panting as heavily as though she had just run a kilometer, was a Sutharian girl, roughly 12 or 13 years old. She had a striking appearance, freckled white skin, copper red hair, and amber eyes. She was dressed in boy's clothing, with her wild, bushy hair tucked under a flat cap. In the dim light, the girl looked like a ghost. "You're not taking me alive," she declared, raising her fists. "I'll fight you!" Looking around, Trig quickly figured out he was blocking the only exit. The girl stared past him to the distant light. "I'm not taking you anywhere," Trig protested, getting back to his feet. "I thought you needed help." "Wait, what?" she said. "I thought you were... hang on. Aren't you one of the guys who was just trying to kidnap me? You look familiar. I know I've seen you before." Trig raised his eyebrows. "No, I'm a farmer," Trig replied. "Why would I want to kidnap you anyway? You threw a raincoat at me. And, by the way, I've never seen you before in my life." A strange expression came over the girl's face. Trig wondered if she was trying to process what he told her, but then her face changed color. The girl grabbed her stomach and doubled over as though she was about to be sick. Trig reached forward and grabbed her, stopping the girl from falling over. Her body was cold and shaking. "Are you okay?" Trig asked. When she did not reply, he said, "Listen, I'm going to take you home. You can rest up, and we'll get the police for you." Trig gently carried the girl up the stairs and back into the sunlit ruins. He was very frightened by how suddenly she had fallen ill. All he could think was to keep her talking, keep her awake. "By the way, My name is Trig. Trig Shepminter, he said. What do I call you? Tenna, the girl wheezed. Tenna Honora.